Hello everyone, welcome to my deep dive on the Sigma BF, one of the most unusual, interesting, and creatively inspiring cameras I've used in a long time. This camera is definitely missing a lot of the niceties you might have come to expect in a mirrorless camera. There is no mechanical shutter, no SD card slot, no IBIS, no mode dial, and frankly the controls feel a little bit more like a modern art piece than a traditional mirrorless camera. In this video, we'll walk through everything you might need to know to get started with the Sigma BF. From navigating the menus and understanding its unique controls, to dialing in photo and video settings, exploring color modes, sharing tips and quirks I learned along the way, and much, much more. I don't anticipate this being a very short video, so I will be leaving timestamps in the description below to get to where you need to go. Let's start with the core specs. The Sigma BF features a 24 megapixel full-frame sensor. That's more than enough resolution for everyday photography, and the quality coming out of this sensor, I think, is excellent. Now, this camera has no mechanical shutter and no IBIS. The camera also has 256 gigabytes of solid-state storage built in. That's right, there's no SD card slot. Everything is saved internally, for better or for worse, and you offload via USB-C. First, a couple notes about the build. It's obviously very beautiful, but I will say it is very prone to scuffs and dents. I was just picking this up one day from below my monitor. I tapped it, and now there's a little bit of a dent. I think the black version will hold up a little bit better over time, but I do think it's a little bit more prone to fingerprints, so pick your poison. Now on to the screen. This is a fixed screen. There's no folding or flipping here. What you see is what you get. What I will say is that the screen looks beautiful. The only problem is when you're outside, sometimes it's not quite bright enough and it's hard to see. On the right side here is a thumb grip, and I will say this is a very welcome addition. Without this camera would be harder to hold than it already is. Now let's talk lenses. This being an L-mount camera, you have a lot of options from where you want to get your lens. You can get it from Sigma, you can get it from Lumix, and you can even get lenses from Leica. Additionally, more and more third parties are making lenses for this system, so keep an eye out for new offerings as I seem to be coming on the market quite frequently as the L-mount expands. Obviously though, the best lenses for this camera are the contemporary art lenses, which Sigma has made to work hand in hand with this camera. They have them in silver, which perfectly matches this camera. They also have them in black to match the black version as well. They're pretty small and they fit this camera well. I'll include links to them down below. On the right side are holes where you can attach a wrist strap. What you'll notice is on the left side, we are missing that, so you'll be stuck with a wrist strap unless you have some sort of grip. As of this video, there aren't a lot of grip options for the Sigma BF. I know that Helium has a really nice one that I've ordered, so when that comes in, I will be reviewing that. Also, Owl Crown I've seen is also planning something as well, but other than that, your options are pretty slim at the moment. As you can see, I put a screen protector on this, but honestly, you could probably find a better one. When I bought this camera, there weren't any options, and so I just sort of found one that roughly matched the dimensions, and it's mostly been fine. On the top are two microphone holes. On the bottom, there is the tripod mount and a little place for the battery. There's a latch here, so if you pull this latch, the battery will pop out. And we'll talk through the battery later, but I will just say it's not great. You might want a couple of them. On the other side is the USB-C port, and you will be using this port a lot because frankly, it's the only way to get photos and videos off this camera because as I mentioned earlier, there is no SD card. Luckily, it does have 256 gigabytes of storage, so depending on your needs, it may not be a problem. I will say that this does have webcam support. Works right out of the box. You'll also notice a focal plane mark right next to that USB-C port as well. On the front, you'll also see this small screen. This is a status monitor. The small screen shows contextual information that changes really based on what mode you're in or what setting you will be trying to adjust. As far as buttons go, there's a singular shutter button at the top. There's a scroll wheel, which you can spin. You can also press directionally as well. There's a button in the center. There's a play button, an options button, a power button, which also you can use as a sleep button. Once you turn on the camera, you'll be greeted with this main menu screen, and this is honestly what you'll be seeing most of the time. There aren't a lot of deep menus in this camera. Most of what you will be doing are offshoots of this main menu. On the top left, you have your drive mode and capture switch, RAW/JPEG settings. Next, you've got your aspect ratio settings, autofocus and manual focus options. After that is your white balance. Heading onto the bottom here, we've got our shutter speed, aperture, exposure compensation, ISO, and your color modes, which we'll go into later. There's also an additional quick menu called the options menu that you can access by pressing the options button. And on the top left here, we have our shooting information, which just you can toggle on or off if you'd like your settings to appear as you're shooting. You've got a center mark that you can toggle on and off. Next, we have your guidelines. And if you click into that, you have different grid options and aspect ratio options. Really quite neat. After that, you have your electronic level, which you can toggle on or off. Next, you have your focal length visibility toggle. So if you'd like to see your focal length as you shoot, you can have that visible. Same with sort of your focus distance as well. On the bottom are your monitor settings. So if you click into this, you can sort of mess with the different brightness settings. If you press left to right, you can adjust the brightness. There are some additional options on the top that you can touch. The first one is like your calibration settings. So if you need to adjust the color of the screen in any way. The second one is an outdoor brightness assist, on or off. I would definitely leave this on because it is not a bright screen when you get outside. The next option is your LCD off mode or on. This is better for darker environments if you need to cut the brightness down. And last is your sleep timer. So how long would you like this camera to stay on before it shuts off? Now let's hop into the sound settings. If you click into this, you'll see a couple of different options. If you press left or right, you can increase the volume for any of the options listed on the screen. Your first option is your shutter volume. And the next is your recording volume, your AF confirmation volume, and your timer volume as well. The mic setting is grayed out right now, but it will have more options when we head into video mode later. The last option here, the USB Connect option, this will change depending on if you have something plugged in. So if you have a charger plugged in, it will just say charging. If you are using as mass storage, it'll say that. So if you're using it as a webcam, it'll also say that, so it really just adjusts to whatever you have there. Okay, back to the main screen. Your first option is your drive mode settings. If you click into that, you'll see a bunch of options below. The first one on the very far left are your video options, which we'll go into a little bit later. Next, you have your single capture, which is just taking a shot every time you hit the shutter button. There's a continuous capture mode, so if you'd like to go from 3 to 8 FPS, you can. There are exposure bracketing settings, which you can go into and adjust as well. There is focus bracketing as well. You can also do an interval timer as well. And if you click into the top here, you can initiate a self timer between 2 or 10 seconds. The next option is your DNG plus RAW settings, and there really aren't a lot here. Your first option is DNG plus JPEG. So this is your RAW plus JPEG setting. There's your RAW setting, and then there's just your JPEG setting. I always leave it to both because I like to have both. Back to the main menu, we're going to go over to our next option, which is the aspect ratio options. This is really one of my favorite features about this camera. There are a lot of different ways that you can capture. So there's a 21:9 option, which I really love. There's a 16:9 option, 3:2, A size, 4:3, 6:7, and 1:1. There's also a crop option at the top if you happen to have an APS-C lens on this camera as well. Next is your autofocus and manual focus settings. So this one is a little bit more complicated and is a little different than in video. You'll use the scroll wheel to scroll or press left and right through the different focusing modes. The first is AFS, single shot. Next is continuous AF, and then manual focus. You can also press up or down to switch from area focus to single point focus. When you click into single point, you can actually move that around as well. You can touch the little flower icon to turn on and adjust focus peaking settings. There are a ton of colors to choose from. Press up and down to affect the sensitivity of the peaking. Back to the main screen, that top left option is your subject tracking options. So you've got just a few. You have off, you've got human and animal detection, you've got human detection, and you've got animal detection. While in the 2AF mode, you can touch the middle button to unlock a few options. These options have to do with engaging manual focus while in autofocus. The first option is to totally disable manual focus while in autofocus. The second option allows manual focus to be enabled while the shutter button is half pressed. And the third option allows you to switch to manual focus at any time by rotating the focus ring. There is an additional option when you're in AFS, if you click into that, and that is the auto review settings. In this, you can turn auto review on or off. When you have pressed the shutter button and focus is achieved, it will display focus peaking and a magnified image for focus. You can set how long it displays from 1 to 5 seconds, and there's a hold option as well, which keeps it on the screen until you unpress the shutter or take the photo. Into the manual focus mode, we encounter a new circle, which probably has an auto icon on it if you're seeing it for the first time. If you touch it, you enter the focus ring control. The focus ring control setting lets you decide how turning your lens focus ring changes the focus when you are focusing manually. Setting it to auto means the focus changes faster if you turn the ring quickly and slower if you turn it slowly. Choosing a specific degree number or max gives you predictable control, where turning the ring a set amount always changes the focus by the same distance. Now, let's head into the white balance settings. The first two options are auto white balance and auto white balance lighting source priority. Auto is just your standard automatic white balance setting, and the other auto option, lighting source priority, this setting allows the camera to automatically determine the appropriate white balance while specifically valuing the color and atmosphere of the light source. This means it tries to prioritize preserving the original feel or color cast of the lighting conditions rather than necessarily trying to make all the whites perfectly neutral. If you press up on the scroll wheel, you can manually adjust the color and tint or hue applied on top of the auto white balance. I know this is a welcome feature for all Fuji users as well, who are probably well accustomed to having this in their cameras. On the right side of the auto white balance settings are the other white balance options. They're broken down by preset white balances like incandescent, fluorescent, daylight, overcast, and shade. You can press up to adjust any of the presets as well. There is also a manual setting where you can dial in your white balance settings manually. There's also a capture setting at the very end. Aim the white box at something white or neutral and press the center button to lock in your white balance. At the top of this menu is the white balance lock, which you can use to lock your white balance once you're happy with how it looks. This will stay locked until you manually untoggle it. Okay, let's head back to the main screen. If you click into any of the following options, shutter speed, aperture, exposure, or ISO, you'll be shuttled into the exposure menu. You can press left and right on each option at the bottom, shutter speed, aperture, exposure, ISO, to get to each setting. When you're hovered over each, you can use the scroll wheel to adjust that setting. You can also press up on any of these options to set that exposure tool into auto mode. When you hover over ISO, you have the additional option to set your minimum and maximum ISO values, so the camera never exceeds those values when ISO is set to auto. When you hover over shutter speed, you'll also have the option to adjust the slowest shutter speed limit, which you will most likely want to change because this camera lacking in IBIS, you'll really need to be careful about camera shake. If you touch the first option, it will reveal your exposure assist options. First, you've got zebras, and if you click into that, you have the option to adjust the percentages for when those zebras engage. And you can also turn on false color as well, which is a really cool feature to have in a camera like this. Back to the exposure menu, the middle option here is the spot metering toggle. The camera by default is in matrix or evaluative metering, and this allows you to toggle on or off spot metering it, which is pretty cool. The third circle option on the top is an auto exposure lock, which you can toggle on or off. Heading back to the main screen, our last option we haven't touched on yet are the color modes. And I think this is one of the coolest menus on this camera. Think of it like Fuji's film simulations or Lumix's real-time LUT feature. So let's dive in. Hopping into this menu are options for color modes. Toggling through these, you have your standard mode, rich, calm, powder blue, warm gold, teal and orange, FOV classic blue, which I believe is Foveon, FOV classic yellow, forest green, sunset red, cinema, 709 look, monochrome as well. You've also noticed with all these presets some options. So the first option, look effect, just kind of ratchets up that setting up or down depending on how you'd like it. The second option is highlights, and then we have shadows, fade, and then we have a vignette as well. One of the cool special things about the monochrome mode is you have additional tone options, which can mimic different color filters as well. The cool part about some of these color mode options is once you bring them into Lightroom, Sigma has actually developed profiles for each one of them. So once you bring them in, you can adjust them there to your liking. I find this really, really cool. It's something you can do on the Fuji cameras, but I don't think you can do on the Lumix cameras. So it's really helpful if you like the look in camera, but may want to adjust some things beyond what you can do in the JPEG. So just know that that's an option as well. So if you're wanting to shoot on the fly, what you'll basically do is when you're out and about, clicking left or right changes the option toggled. So for example, if I have this in aperture priority mode, I can keep this area up here on exposure compensation and just ride this dial up or down as I please. And you can do this for any option on this main screen. Now let's head into the video options. To head into video, we'll go back to the main menu and head over to the drive options setting. There, we hover over the film camera icon. You'll notice here is where we can change our codecs and log options. The camera gives you the option of recording in H.264, H.265, and L-Log. I'm not exactly sure why L-Log is listed here separately and not somewhere else, but it is what it is. For now, let's head into H.264. This menu will look very familiar to what we've been seeing on the photo side, with a few changes. In the top right, you'll see how much time is left to record with the current settings. On the top left is the option to change codecs. The next option is our resolution and frame rate settings. If we click into that setting, we get two columns. The one on the left lets us choose from Full HD up to 120 FPS, 4K up to 30 FPS, and 6K up to 30 FPS. Back to the main video menu, our next option listed is the crop ratio. So if you have an APS-C lens, for example, you can enter this menu to engage that crop. You can also set it to auto-engage the crop if you'd like it to do that when it senses a crop lens on the camera. Back to the video menu, our next option is stabilization. And there are just two options here, on and off. Turning it on adds a 1.25 crop to the footage. Heading back to the autofocus manual focus setting, there are three options. You've got constant AF, continuous AF, and manual focus. So these autofocus settings are a little bit confusing in video and probably not what you come to expect by these names. Constant AF is kind of what you've probably come to expect from continuous autofocus and other cameras. So depending on what your focus box is, or if you have subject detection on, it will focus on that and it will transition depending on where you aim the camera. Autofocus continuous on this camera really is a little bit strange. So how the autofocus works in this mode is it only engages the autofocus when you have pressed the shutter. So if you already set the focus on something, if you want to transfer it somewhere else, you're going to need to press that half shutter again. So you'll probably want to stay in constant AF or manual focus. I haven't found the continuous AF to be super helpful for my workflow, but you may find it helpful for yours. Hopping into manual focus, if you engage the focus ring, it will magnify and show peaking if you have it on. If you look in the top right corner, you'll also see a couple of dots counting down. This just tells us how long it's going to stay up until it goes away. That being said, the continuous autofocus is not super great on this camera. I think it's a lot better in photo than it is in video. As you can see, as I move forward and backwards, it tends to lose me sometimes, or it takes a while to catch up. I think with future firmware updates, we can probably get this a little bit better, but just know if you're planning to use this as a talking head camera, it's probably not your best bet among many other reasons as well. But I do think it's usable for some things, but if you're wanting to use it as a locked off headshot camera, then I would probably just set it in manual focus. Just like in photo mode, you have the option here to change how the focus ring interacts. So if you want a linear, or if you'd like to set the degrees manually, you can do that in video mode as well. Hopping over into our exposure menu for video, you'll notice on the shutter speed section that we have an additional option. We can also turn on shutter angle. So if you'd rather use shutter angle rather than shutter speed, you have the option, which is really, really cool. Now that we're in video mode, you're going to see some additional settings on the audio side. So if we click into that, we can adjust our internal mic sensitivity. Right now you can see it's set to auto, but if I click right, I can adjust that level up and down to my preference. And you can see on the very top here, this toggle is for a wind noise cancellation. So if you want to turn that on or off, it's as simple as toggling that there. There are ways to get internal audio into this camera, but it's a little bit complicated. Um, I will make a video on in the future. From what I know, you need a recorder that can do 16-bit. A lot of the portable mic packs that you are seeing around the internet, so think the DJI or Rode, not all of them will work equally. I do think the Rode has a 16-bit option that you can use through the USB port on this. So I'll do a future video on audio with this camera, but just know it's not as easy as it might be on another camera. Now let's head into the playback setting. While you're on this main screen, you can hover your finger over the play button to see the last image or video that you've recorded. If you click fully in, you are now in the playback menu. So if you scroll left or right, you can see all the photos that you've taken recently. You can click into a photo with the center button, which zooms in 10 times. You can also pinch to zoom. On any photo, you can press the option button and it has a couple of options. The first option, of course, is to delete. You can rotate this. You can lock the photo so nothing can happen to it. You have the option to select multiple files as well. Next is the DNG development option, and this is really cool. When you click into this menu, it basically gives you the option to edit the photo right in camera. So the first option is to increase or decrease the exposure. The second is you can actually change the aspect ratio. You can change the fill light. You can change the white balance. You can change the lens compensation, and you can change the color mode as well. Pretty cool. And the last option on playback is a file display setting, which shows you to either show files horizontally or vertically. There's also an exposure warning on or off toggle, which really indicates any overexposed areas, and it shows that by blinking. Now let's head into our last menu, and this is the system settings. So this is the deepest you can go probably in the settings in this camera. Yeah, so let's go by this one by one. Our first option here is our information and firmware options. So this just allows us to see the model name, model number, our serial number, firmware version, what lenses you have on the camera, etc. Next is our storage/file management. Our top option here is our file numbering reset. So that if you click into this allows you to reset the file name if you want to. Here you can also format the internal storage as well. Next is our copyright information. You can toggle it on or off, add your information as a photographer, copyright owner, etc. Next option is our lens optic compensation options. So you can turn on or off diffraction compensation here, or optical vignetting compensation as well. Our next option is shutter blackout, which you can turn on or off. There's also a sensor refresh option, which you might want to do every now and then. The next setting is adjust electronic level. And so basically what this does is just, if you feel like your calibration is a little bit out of whack, you can recalibrate that level. The next option is your date, time, and area settings. You'll probably have done this when you first turn on the camera, but if you need to adjust it, you can here. Next is your language and distance units, and if you click into that, you can set your language, whether you want feet or meters. The last option on this list is settings management. So here you can save all the settings that you have programmed into your camera, and then every time you do that, it saves a new backup. So let's say you've changed some settings somewhere and you don't know exactly what you did, but you'd like it to go back to, you had it, you can go back there and use one of those backups to go right back where you started. And with that, I think we've covered mostly everything on this camera. Thanks for watching. This is my first time doing this sort of thing, so I promise to get a little bit better in the future. If there's anything that I've missed, please leave a comment below. I'll either answer it there or I'll make a video. Thanks again for being here. I'll see you next time.